Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm going to be looking at, from War Thunder, a plane called the IL-4, which is a Russian bomber, tier 6, which, to be honest, it's okay. It's nothing special, it doesn't have a high payload, it doesn't have crazy amounts of guns like any of the Flying Fortresses, but it's basically your average bomber at this level. If you compare it to any of the German bombers, it isn't as good in any way, except for maybe the armor. It seems, without any upgrades, it seems to have a better armor value than the other bombers. It's obviously better than the Wellington from the British planes. I don't rate the Wellington very highly at all. It just seems to be a huge target and it gets taken out way too easily. So we're going to be playing a domination on Stalingrad, which isn't great for a bomber, but I suppose they're still useful, since if you land in a domination with a bomber, you can still, you can sit there with your auto turrets, or even use them yourselves, using this view, control your gunners, and land on a capture point and try and hold it for as long as possible. Now, looking at the IL-4, it has 3 gunners. It has this bottom guy, which is pretty useless most of the time, unless fighters come at you from below. Only from the back though, not from the front. And even on the AR-2, which is the bomber before this bomber you can get on the Russian research tree, this gunner doesn't seem to do much. He seems to have a nice life, to be honest. He never really gets shot. Because fighter planes, if they come up to your level of play, they usually come at you directly behind or above you, which means that this guy in the central dome turret, I suppose, who has a 360 view, which is a great upgrade from the AR-2 class. It means that he has free range and can cover you from all angles if somebody decides to attack you from the top. Now the other gunner is this front gunner. Now you're only really going to be using this guy if you decide to go down to fighter level and have some fun when you believe either the match is lost or you need to make a difference somehow as a bomber. So let's just try and drop some bombs on these targets. Unfortunately, the payload without any upgrades of this aircraft is not great. I'm using 10 100-kilogram bombs, which don't really pack enough punch. If you're going to be using 10 of something, you want them to really pack a punch. Maybe 250 kilos would be better. Because with 100 kilos, you don't have a huge blast radius when you're trying to hit stuff. Unfortunately, I think I missed every single one there. But oh well. But as I was saying, it's a pretty decent bomber. It can hold its own, which I think is the best way to describe it. It is nothing special. I will keep saying that until I die. But it does look nice. It's quite large for a bomber, so that means that if fighters decide to come after you, which doesn't happen that much, they will be able to hit you quite easily. And from what I've seen from playing a few games with this thing, the rudder is very, very fragile, and the engine seems to cut out quite a lot. But it's still a decent plane. I've never had any trouble with the gunners going unconscious or anything, so they seem to have good coverage, which is always nice. Right, my bombs are back, so where should I line up? Yeah, let's go for these. Let's try and do a bit of a dive bomb here. Why not? And bonk, bonk, bonk. Now with this high altitude, you want to try and aim just before the tanks. Like, I'd say per 1,000 meters of altitude, you maybe want to aim about 50 meters in front of the tank. Oh, see what I mean? Somebody came from me from directly behind. Oh wow, okay. Well, that wasn't great. I have no idea what happened there. Maybe my fuel decided to explode. Well, that's a shame. I'll bring you another game in this, since that one was very short. So we're back again with the IL-4. just waiting for a game. Usually around this time, especially on a Saturday night, it doesn't take very long to find a game, which is awesome. Especially when you enjoy War Thunder as much as me. Now, Ground Strike, Top of the World. I don't really enjoy the Top of the World map, but I suppose at least it's a Ground Strike, so I can show this bomber's capabilities. Ground Strike is obviously tiered towards the bombers, even though most people still go to the fighters, because, well, in War Thunder, the type of combat, it really does focus on the fighters. It's a lot more fun flying fighters than it is bombers, unfortunately. And if this game was played properly, which I wish it was, you would have maybe, I don't know, a squadron of bombers, let's say maybe 6 or 7 bombers, and then they're guarded with a fighter escort, which would be obviously other online players. That would be awesome, and then you'd have 2 bomber squadrons flying against each other. If only that was the case. Instead, you have a ton of people in heavy fighters, like the bow fighter, going around trying to murder each other for no reason at all, especially on a ground strike map. I mean, the whole idea is to take out the ground targets. So, if you're not going after them, it's pretty useless. But I suppose some fighter pilots do go after the ground targets, which is great. Yeah. Looks like quite an interesting play. At this level, at tier 6, 7, even still, you're not going to get many people who actually go after fighters. I mean, you will get the odd one like we saw last game, but to be honest, you can be left alone, and I have no idea what that guy's doing. Yeah, he's going to get quite a few cheap kills, because he doesn't have to target that much, but some fighter's going to come up his ass and absolutely tear him a new one. So hopefully he can be covered well by our fighters. We'll see, though. I suppose at that level the fighters do a good job of covering the bombers. But unfortunately now he's skewed my vision, but it's okay. So other facts about this plane. I don't know. I've never. The first time I've ever seen a plane explode like that was in the last game, so I've never had that problem before with it. As I said, it can take a lot of bullets, but that was a new experience. It seemed like it only took 10, and then it exploded. Maybe you got a critical hit on a fuel tank or something. And it was only from a Kitty Hawk. I mean, a Kitty Hawk doesn't pack a huge amount of punch compared to some other fighters in this game, like the bow fighter. Bow fighter and the bow fighter Mark 10, Jesus, they really can tear you apart, especially with the 4 cannons. They just, that's not good at all. It seems like our fighters have got pretty decent ground control though, so that means that if I feel like going down I can, without any real issue, which is always nice as a bomber. As a bomber you want to feel safe, that's what I'd say. I still worry about this bomber in the way of what impact it can actually have on a game. I mean, if you look at other bombers at this level, like the Heinkel can really just wreck through ground targets. It's as simple as that, because it has so many bombs. The Catalina, it really holds up well against fighter attacks, and once again, it has a hell of a lot of bombs. If you're looking distinctly just as an upgrade from the AR2, this is definitely a good upgrade to have. They basically have the same bomb load, but the thing is, this aircraft is tougher, and the back gunner, who has a 360-degree view over the top of the plane, it just makes you feel better, that if something does happen up there, you can really deal with it, even if you have to manually control your guys. Because that's the real problem I've always had with the AR2, because the top gunner, this guy in the bubble, I suppose, he could only really shoot maybe 40 degrees behind him. So therefore you had to turn into fighters to try and engage them. And it was kind of like this guy, the guy at the bottom, but on the top. So in a way, you had two very, very shallow and strict lines where these guys could shoot. I don't really see the purpose in this front gunner. I mean, yeah, I suppose he acts as a bomber as well, unless there's somebody else in there. But I suppose if you decide to go after people, or somebody foolishly tries to ram you, you can at least try and do something about it. But overall, it's a pretty standard bomber. There's really, if I was gonna give it a name, it would be Mr. Average. It has an average bomb load. It has the average amount of turrets, nothing special really. It has an average speed, and it can go up to high altitudes without really any problem. Landing this thing is hard, because obviously with a huge wingspan, and if you're damaged, like let's say you have wing damage, you'll be like this. So therefore, the wing will always run into the ground before you do, which means that it has to be repaired, and it would take longer to repair. But if you can land it without any issues, without any repairs needed, then I think it'll be quite easy to land, because with the big wingspan, you have a lot of stability. Obviously that makes turning a bit harder. It doesn't turn as well as other bombers, like the Beaumont, which is a tier 3 bomber from the British. That turns really well, but you could basically say that's a bow fighter with a few bombs. Whereas this, it cannot be a fighter basically. It has to be a bomber, which is good if you're going for the bomber role. Ugh. But it still seems our guys are doing well, holding off the enemy fighters, which is always a good sign. And we're also winning. But no, it was quite fun the other night having the Halloween event, if any of you decided to play in it or watching it. Unfortunately, I got 110 kills instead of 120, so I didn't get that special plane which I was going to show you. But still, I mean, it was a fun event. It was nice to get some extra XP. That's always good in my book, especially someone without a premium account. Ooh, a Blenheim, that's quite nice. But no, I would still recommend lower tier bombers over this, such as the Catalina and the Heinkel. The Heinkel will always be your best bet in games like this, even in tier 6 and 7 games, because it just has a better payload. It's as simple as that. Even though it can't destroy large ground targets, so what? You can destroy everything else. And luckily, it seems with the new patch, there's definitely less artillery on each map, so you don't really have to worry about that as much. It seemed like before the latest patch, I was always getting hit by artillery all the flipping time. It wasn't great, to be honest. It's never fun getting your wing torn off by AI, but I suppose it makes it more realistic in a way. Right, what ground targets have we got left? I think I'll just go for the base, why not? As you can see at this altitude, I've been completely uncontested the whole match, which is great, and it seems like the enemy doesn't really care about bombers in the way that they basically have none of their own, and if they are, they seem to be dive bombing, which is a terrible idea, especially in something this big, or even a Blenheim. Blenheims are a massive machine. But if we can just sink these last few, this will make it a lot easier for our team to win. And there we go, there goes the bombs. Hopefully some of them hit. Unfortunately, my accuracy with this crew isn't very good, so they're a bit wayward. Typical Russians, really, I suppose, in World War II. A lot of firepower, a lot of men, but it's kind of shooting at a barn door. Eventually you'll hit it, it just depends how many people it takes. The only thing I would be worried about this bomber is holding up against the same tier of bombers and fighters, because at this level you have Yaks, you have Messerschmitts coming in, you have Fokker-Wulfs even in a few tiers, and also you have Spitfires, Hurricanes, and even what were they called? Even the heavy fighters, basically from every faction now. It seems like they've really put a lot of effort into the heavy fighters, which is good, because it was a part of the game which wasn't very fleshed out, and now it is. But it seems like a lot of fighters now have a lot of firepower. Like the Hurricane Mark II, which is only tier 3, it has 12 machine guns, which could easily tear this type of plane apart. Like, it doesn't matter what bomber you are, you will get destroyed by that unless you're in a flying fortress or something like that. Also, there are a lot of planes now which have loads and loads of cannons, and it doesn't matter what plane you're flying, bomber or fighter, those cannons will completely tear you up. And that's very noticeable in the Spitfires, because the Spitfires have tons of firepower, let's say 2 to 4 cannons and then 4 to 8 machine guns, which can just destroy a plane. Or it seems like at the moment I'm getting killed a lot by my pilot becoming unconscious, so I have to increase, I think it's my vitality on most of my pilots. But on this, it's a very bog standard crew, and they seem to be doing pretty well. I will need to upgrade them a bit, but I suppose I'm looking further towards the higher bomber tiers for Russian bombers, because I don't really rate this thing. As I said, it's Mr. Average. But it is still a lovely plane and looks absolutely beautiful. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.